You're so funny. Welcome, everyone, to Transform Your Relationships Live. I'm Laura Rubinstein here with the amazing Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Hi, Rhoberta.
Good morning, amazing Laura Rubinstein.
Why, thank you. Um, we have a hot and spicy topic today, all about apologizing and apologies. And I love how you opened up today, which was to say,
I apologize. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And that, you're from Canada, and it's a very popular phrase in Canada. I think it's used differently um, than in different cultures use that differently. But, I was thinking about, people who apologize and you really don't feel like they apologize, or people who don't apologize and you really would like them to apologize.
hmm
So we have kind of the flip sides of the same coin there, and also some people who apologize all the time. So which one should we start with?
Well, I don't know because I want to add a couple things into the mix.
Yeah.
You also can be sorry about something and sorry for something and sorry for having something. I mean, there are ways. Like I just was away for the weekend, and the woman that I was visiting, I said something about, I feel really sorry that happened. And she said, well, what do you mean? Sorry is an apology. What do you mean you feel sorry? Right? So there's a distinction there too. So I think we can include that in what we have to say today. Because you're right, in Canada, we apologize for a lot more, a lot earlier. In fact, sometimes I think we have an apology for existing, for speaking up at all in the worst case scenario. And, I'm sorry to bother you. How many
Yeah.
times do we hear that? Well, who said you were bothering me? I mean, how did that already start that way?
Boy,
You
this is a juicy, juicy topic.
yeah. So I mean, doesn't that happen? Like you ring up somebody and you want to talk to them, and you already know you have an agenda. You'd really like to talk about it, and you know it's going to take a little while, and they don't know that. And you may start with, "I'm sorry to bother you, but." Well, what? Like, if you wanted to make a time to talk, we could have made a time to talk and then we would have agreed. But I'm sorry to bother you, but I'd like to talk. That's so convoluted. So I'm so glad we're talking about this.
Okay, so there's apologizing, asking for forgiveness is what I'm hearing, which we haven't really talked about yet. And we're kind of asking for forgiveness, but then there's the also the sorry that I feel badly about, sympathizing with you. Sorry, which is not have anything to do with an apology. Right? So that's why I call this show apologizing, because sorry is a convoluted term because it has these multi layers of things.
Mhm.
I read an article, you'll find this interesting, about sorry and thank you. Okay, you can use sorry, like the person is, here's a scenario. There's a table full of people, and it's right next to the kitchen and in a restaurant. And somebody new comes to the table and asks the person who's sitting at a really nice seat away from the kitchen to say, I'm so sorry to ask this of you, you know, would you mind, like to, to, to move, could you move, right? Could you move? Sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Like you're asking for them to forgive you for something you're inconveniencing them with versus saying, oh, I think it was after they actually moved, they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry about it." And really, it was the only way it was going to happen versus saying, "Thank you for moving," and acknowledging them versus, "Please forgive me for this imposition." It took it about them versus like, "Thank you for
Yeah.
moving," and making it about the other person who,
Yes.
yeah. So
That's
there's
a
that
big
whole layer
distinction.
too. Sorry
Yes.
people
Yeah.
versus thank you people.
hmm
So, like I always say when I host a show for Women Speakers Association, the WSA TV Premier Women's Show, and I coach the women. If you're on mute and you start talking and I say unmute, don't say sorry. Say thank you. because it makes the audience feel bad when you say sorry, right? Instead of saying thank you, like it's a non-issue. It really is just say thank you, move on.
But the question also comes up there, Laura, is I'm sorry to have to ask you this immediately. And me goes, well, don't then.
Right, if
Right?
you're really
Like,
sorry,
if you're
and
sorry to have to
apologize
ask
and
me
say
this, don't ask me because it's your choice whether you're going to ask me. And I understand why they do it. And it's very convoluted, lots of steps in there that went on in their head before anything came out of their mouth. But the actual fact is, I have a request. Not, I'm sorry, I have to ask you this.
yeah. Right.
Like own it. I have a request. Don't own I'm sorry that I'm going to ask you to do something I know you may not want to do, and you may feel obligated, and I hope you'll do it. Just I think that's one of the things about being an emotional grown up is don't ask a question you're not willing to have an answer of yes or no.
Or no being the key, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, kind of fits into this conversation because if you're saying, I'm sorry that I have to ask this, but I mean, my gut just, and I've often said this to people, well, don't then. And we laugh and they say, oh, but I do need to ask. I say, okay, well, then just ask.
Yeah, why are we trying to couch it? Is that what they're doing? Couching?
Well, they're apologizing before they get to it because they don't. My read in that the question that I have is, don't you believe you deserve to ask this question? Is there some way that you think that you're not entitled to your request? And you are, as long as you're equally willing to hear yes or no. But that whole preamble kind of sets it up for only a yes. So
Hmm.
it's a little bit away from apology, but it is the use of the word sorry.
Right.
And what shows that you're sorry more than a change in behavior, in fact, is the only thing. I mean, if you say you're sorry for something, don't do it again.
Oh, what a concept, right? Well, you know what? A long time ago, and I don't remember the whole philosophy behind it, but somebody said stop using the word sorry. Ask for forgiveness, say I apologize. Well, I do remember one thing about it. Like when you say I'm sorry, it's an affirmation. I'm a sorry person. I'm sorry. It doesn't, like and 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 I said, okay, well, let me take that on. Let me see how it changes the way I think because it does prevent me from doing the, oh, I'm so sorry, like forgive me for existing type of thing, or the I'm sorry, I'm going to impose on you thing, because you can't say I apologize and say that. It just doesn't work, right?
Right.
So if you eliminate those two words from your vocabulary, you're not using them as, I don't know, these social um, I almost want to call them intrusions.
Hmm. Interesting insight.
Yeah, because if I'm intruding on you, if I'm saying, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, if I'm asking you I'm really making a request, and I know it's something that's going to impose upon you, and you think you're being polite to one degree, but on the other, it causes the reaction in you, then, well, don't ask, like there's some part of our physical being and emotional being that says, is bracing for being uncomfortable in this conversation, and you're putting the discomfort on the other person now instead of saying
Yeah.
I have a request, which is really uncomfortable to say a lot of times,
But
right?
isn't that where the growth is, to be able to come to a place to be able to say, I'm entitled to ask, I'm entitled to a request. I can ask for anything as long as I'm equally willing to hear yes or no without complaining.
Yeah,
Right.
renegotiate, you know.
Yeah. But the whole business of not coming to that emotional growing up space maybe is the reason we have all of these things. And I just want to throw something else into the mix because when I moved to the United States from Canada, I learned a convention down here that I was really kind of surprised, considering what we've already talked about, that Canadians apologize a lot. When somebody would say, "Oh, I got the flu last week," the American person would say to me, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I was like, "What? I'm supposed to say I'm sorry that you got the flu last week." Okay, that's new to me. Um, there's another way that it works. I'm sorry for your pain. I'm sorry for your difficulties. But it was in particular in connection to the physical health. And that surprised me, even though I probably came to this country with more sorries than the average person. But then I learned there was another one. I really have a headache. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're going through that. It's a way of empathizing.
Yeah. So that's what do you think about that? Is that okay? Is that fun? Is there something fundamentally off with that, or is
No,
that
I don't think so. I think
okay?
it's just expanding our conversation
Yes,
about the way that we use words that are usually connected to apology.
right, right. So this, yeah, for me, the sorry word is not an apology. It's just not. It's a sympathy. It's a forgive me for existing. Like it's really not apologizing for something that was done that needs forgiveness, that truly needs forgiveness. I try to, because it has so many different layers that if I want forgiveness, I want to ask for forgiveness, you know. And I think sorry is a really low level way to ask for forgiveness because you never know which way did he mean it.
So
Um,
what happens if your partner really screws up, really does something that you know that they know is something that bothers you, and they say, "I'm sorry. I know how that matters to you, and I did it anyway." Do you think that's a good use of the word sorry?
it's a fine use. It's for me, it's a personal choice, is what I'm saying. That I'm wanting to expand my growth. And so I might use it on occasion, but I really try to be clear with myself what's going on. And I know that if I make the distinction for myself, like, please forgive me, or I apologize and want to apologize. And then I have to because it makes because you could just say I'm sorry blanketly, right? It's a lazy way of apologizing, in my opinion. Although the way you did it, you expanded upon it. I know I made you feel this way, and I don't want to do it again. But I'm sorry is a complete thought in and of itself, and it doesn't take me deep enough to really in doing some introspection here.
Okay, so you're in a crowded restaurant and you knock somebody's purse over. Do you say I'm sorry?
Yes,
And that's it.
yes, because that is the cultural thing you do. I'm not in a relationship with that person. But when I'm in relationship with somebody, I'm going to try my best unless I want to be lazy. Like I know these things about myself. I can sense when I'm like, I don't know what to say. So it's kind of like a default de facto. It's not a bad thing. Um, it's just like if I really want to process it, I will process it and then I will ask for an apology to apologize for something or ask for forgiveness. I just like to clarify the distinction in my for myself. It's like, well, you know, I try not to even get in those situations, but it can't be helped, right? So if I feel the need to apologize, I may say it's not sorry isn't bad. It's just, how are we using it? It's just about being more conscious about it. And then if we are going to use it for ask for forgiveness, then somebody said to me, or oh, I saw a skit or I saw a TV program that said, you didn't, I said, I'm sorry, but you didn't forgive me. I really need you to forgive me.
Oh,
And I thought that was interesting. So do you forgive me? And that's, um, where a sorry can leave people in a place of limbo too, because they never get, it's not an ask for forgiveness. It's just a statement of,
yeah. Well, I just looked it up. I just wanted to know what the dictionary had to say about it. And it says that sorry as an adjective is feeling distress, especially through sympathy with someone else's misfortune. And the second one is feeling regret or penitence. Right. So the regret part is something that's part of what we've been discussing right
Yeah.
now.
But it's not asking for it's not asking for forgiveness.
No, it's not asking for
Yeah.
forgiveness.
It's
Um,
just saying, I regret this. So it leaves the apology truncated for me sometimes, if one wants to be forgiven.
well, I wonder if anybody else that's listening has an idea about this or a question or what's going on in your head, because this sets off a whole big level of inquiry. Like, I've got this list now: sorry about, sorry for having, sorry and asking for forgiveness, sorry that happened to you, sorry you're going through that, sorry that in expression of sympathy. And then the one that you add is sorry, forgive me for existing. Uh,
Yeah. And, I see that a lot of times people are like, oh, but is this okay? There's so much self-doubt in there that it's just like, why? You are a beautiful being. Stop it. Just stop it. And the Bob Newhart show.
yeah, right.
Think about that. But the thing is that when you're saying I'm sorry or sorry, there's so many different layers, so it's pretty interesting actually. But then there's the um, I'm sorry that you feel this way. That is not really an apology.
Well, no, and that's a really big question that we need to talk about, because when what happened recently? Yes, major relationship in my life. I something came up, and um, and we were going to have lunch, and it was really important to me, and the person really knew it was really important to me because we'd had the conversation. Really important that we have lunch on the birthday, not another day, but on the birthday. And so it was very exciting to me that we had agreed it was going to happen. And then the night before, I got the call to say, well, let's celebrate another day because, this is going to happen tomorrow at lunchtime. And the words were, and when I said, oh, I'm very disappointed and I feel like our agreement didn't really hold anything. And the words were, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I just wanted to take out the universal 2x4 and smash the phone as far as it would go. Because what do you mean? I'm sorry you feel that way. What an absolute removal of yourself as the cause,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I mean, I think we've talked about using that phrase in a certain, when people are disagreeing with you or telling you you feel, you know, they feel some certain way about you, but when they're causing you discomfort, um, as a
I'm
react,
sorry you feel that way.
it's a weird use of it. It's
Yeah,
a
like
very,
mind boggling, like
it's a manipulative.
convoluted.
It feels like a very manipulative use of it. So there, like we were talking, I think this was just last week or the last time we met, we were talking about using that phrase, I'm
Yeah.
sorry you feel that way. And that was when dealing with a difficult person who's trying to put something on you. Or this is someone who's trying to forgive, maybe that they did something out of an agreement you had and they still want to put it on you. That's like turning
Mhm.
the tables on you.
Yeah, it was. It was that complete hijackal move. Like, I'm not going to take any responsibility for it, but I'm going to try and say the right thing, which is, I'm sorry, but I don't really want to take any ownership of being sorry. So I'm going to add that you feel that way. So you're doing something internally to yourself that's causing you to feel badly as a result of my wanting to do what I want to do. And I'm going to do what I want to do anyway. So I'm just sorry that that is inconvenient to you, but if you have feelings about it, too bad. And it was like so obvious. But because of the population I work with, this is not something that I'm unfamiliar with. And at that moment, no, we've already had this conversation. That is unacceptable. It is just unacceptable for you to say, I'm sorry you feel that way. Do you have something else in your complete vocabulary that perhaps would acknowledge your part in this. No.
Yeah. So when is okay to use the "I'm sorry that you feel this way" versus, you know, I'm sorry.
I think it's appropriate when it sounds like this. I'm so sorry you have to go through that. That sounds tough. Right? I'm sorry you're having an emotional experience that has nothing to do with me. Right? So it's not in conversation about our relationship. I think you can say to someone, and I say it often, especially in groups and things that I have, because someone will talk about a horrendous thing that happened to them. And I am sorry that they have to go through it.
But
Yeah,
if you did something to me
that
and
would be entirely different.
you're a hijackal, and I am saying I feel hurt and I'm this um and I am crying and whatever, and you say as the hijackal, I'm sorry you feel that way.
I
Okay.
expect to be dead momentarily if I were talking to me.
Right, but I mean, if but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
um I think a hijackal can use it the same way when it does have to do with the relationship.
Oh, absolutely. That's their go-to thing. I mean, that's almost as close as they come to anything that looks like empathy.
Right.
Right, truly it is. But I do think it's appropriate. I do regret someone else having to go through a nasty experience. I do regret that. Not that I personally have done anything to create it, but generally, and maybe this brings up a need for other language, generally, like that's harsh. I might say to somebody in one of my groups or things, that's really harsh. I'm sorry that you have to walk through that series of emotions.
Right. So is it ever appropriate to use "I'm sorry that you feel that way" when it's something that happens between the two of you?
No,
So if a hijackal's coming at me and says, "You're the one who's to blame for this, and you are the cause of this problem," I shouldn't say, "I'm sorry you feel that way."
no, I would say I disagree. I see it differently, and I don't accept the blame.
Hmm.
Right? Like have it stop here, and I talk about myself, not them.
Right.
And that's always the best, whether it's a hijackal or not. Because when somebody is spitting blame at you like that, of course, hijackals do that all the time. Everything is your fault because nothing is their fault. But when somebody wants to blame you for something, you have to do an inner calibration and see, do I feel like I have any responsibility for the things that we're discussing at this moment? And if you see it completely differently, then that's what you say. You don't say, I'm sorry you feel that way, because that's just some kind of convention to shut down the conversation.
Yep. Yep. And it's a controlling factor.
Oh, big control thing. Yeah. And then, and then I told you I was sorry you had those feelings. Yeah, you did, but you caused them. So how about picking up the program here? I
Yeah.
take responsibility that I chose to respond to it that way. You didn't make those feelings in me, but you presented the opportunity for me to pick up that and then process it in a way that causes me to feel left out, rejected, not worthwhile, that our agreement didn't mean anything, that you don't really understand how important it was to me. All of those things, if we go back to my example.
Yeah. And you said a very key thing there. It's about when one or the other party has a responsibility, has a part in creating, was part responsible for creating this challenge. If somebody has a part responsibility and they start using that phrase, "I'm sorry you feel that way," they're abdicating their responsibility. And like you said, they're putting blame where, they're like deflecting, projecting
Mhm.
the blame. And that is, you know, a true sign I see of a hijackal at different degrees. It depends how harsh they
Well,
are.
it's a hijackal response, whether the person's a hijackal or not.
Thank you for the
Right?
clarification.
Yeah. And I think that it's something that, this conversation is bringing me clarity. I'm thinking more and more deeply about it. So I hope the people that are listening were thinking about this, and we'd love to see comments below when you watch this, because this is really worth thinking about. It's a primary way of processing. And another thing that came to me when you were just summing that up, Laura, is that I think by saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, what he was hoping was that we were going to get to the apology really fast and we could leave out all the conversation. Right? Like if I just apologize really quickly in my own hijackally way, then it will be okay.
Get away
No,
with it.
you just left out the whole meat of the matter, right? And you went from, I'm going to do what I want to do. Sorry you don't like it. Are we done with it? No, 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 no. You left out the
So
middle.
let's go through this process because I don't think people know how to apologize. I don't think people know how to ex to process an apology or, even request one or deal with something like that. So how do we get into that middle space of, okay, so somebody says to you, I'm really disappointed. What would be a great way to kind of take responsibility and give that person who you're causing this challenge for closure?
Well, first of all, don't think you're going to do it in 30 seconds or less, because I know that's your hope.
Mhm.
Right? It depends how close the relationship is. If you're in a very close, intimate partner relationship or parent or sibling relationship where that person's going to be in your life for a long time, um, that requires a whole different degree of thought and willingness and ability to work on it. So let's take that scenario to answer your question. Okay, let's take my scenario. Okay, the person says, it's not going to happen. And I say, blah, 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 not happy. Answer, I'm sorry you feel that way. What could I have heard? I so know how important it was to you that we have lunch tomorrow. I really get it. And something's come up that I just between a rock and a hard place, and I had to make a decision. And I made this decision, and I know it will hurt you. Okay, you've given me some idea that you have thought about me, that you know how I'm responding, you know what's important to me, you have considered it. And then because I know and you very, very well, and you tell me that you've thought long and hard about it, I can then say, oh, well, that must have been a tough decision for you too. And now we have empathy, right? But like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And too bad if you don't like it. Oh, sorry you feel that way. No, we left out the meat of the matter. So by preceding something like that with definitely having someone else know that they you demonstrate that you know how the other person and you are in relationship and what could be going on as your preamble to saying, I am sorry for this, is a really good start.
And it makes me think about relationships and how we damage them in a sense, because the minute you disappoint somebody, you've tainted the relationship in some way. And it happens. I mean, this is what life is about. We taint relationship all the time, but if we can prevent that, we build more and more trust and um, closeness. The more we do things like disappoint and we don't process it, the greater the fissure in the relationship that happens, because something just happened in the relationship that yes, they're going to disappoint, so they're going to chisel away at that relationship a little bit, but they deepen the fissure by not showing the empathy or the care or the concern, because they just showed you they can't be trusted, they don't care as much as you thought they did about you.
And that they matter more than the relationship at that moment.
Right.
Like what they need or what they want is taking priority. And I'm, in a good, healthy, rich, intimate relationship, that's going to happen, right? Somebody's needs take precedence over someone else's. And that's the give and take of relationship.
Right. You don't have
But
to be a doormat. You don't have to always put them
no,
first.
no.
You put
And
yourself first and you disappoint. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and sometimes it's going to be like, I choose this and I know the consequences and I know all the pieces of it and I can fill them all in. And if you're smart, you fill them all in first. And then you say, and here's what I've chosen to do tomorrow. Right? All the difference in the world. But if you don't have empathy, you're not going to do that. So that would be a dyed in the wool hijackal response. But if you do have empathy and you don't have very good skills, what we're talking about here is an upgrade in skills.
Yeah. And we didn't, you kind of alluded to it. We didn't verbalize it specifically, but the next step or a way to, for me, that fissure that's been created to kind of heal it is how can I make this up to you? I am committed to making this up to you is like because I want to let you know you're still important. I'm still willing to put forth effort for you. I'm not just going to take my priority and run and abdicate this need that I know you have, this promise that I know I made. And I want to make it okay. I'm not going to make it maybe 100%, but I'd like to, show you that I want to take, I'm not just selfishly doing what I want to do and without regard for you.
And I think it depends on the sequence of the conversation, because going back to the example that I get, if I've already heard, I'm sorry you feel that way, all the scrambling in the world about, well, we could have lunch tomorrow, we could do it on another day, or we could do that, way too late. Way too late. Like, forget it. It has to go into the conversation, to say, I I will definitely take responsibility for this and make a special effort to do it tomorrow. Could you possibly go with that for me? And and then you feel like, oh, we're in it together. We're creating something together, and it's not the end of the world. And yes, it's a broken agreement, but sometimes agreements get broken. Sometimes you just can't do what you said you were going to do. And the proactive thing is always important. If you can't keep an agreement that you've made, always communicate that the minute you know you can't keep it. Don't wait and just not keep it. Another big thing to talk about sometime. But, you know, don't be afraid of the conversation because you think you're going to have to wear somebody else's feelings for a moment. And I think that's what happens here, is that, if you think, well, I'm going to do it and I'm sorry you feel that way, is like, I'm afraid to hear you say all these things that you feel, so I'm just going to shortcut the process, try to get to the end. I'm apologizing, and well, I already apologized. What more do you want from me? Right? Well, a whole lot more, believe me.
Yeah.
Or, I will understand that the relationship is not at the level that I thought it was or hoped it was. Right?
It's an apology when someone says, I'm sorry you feel that way, is the empathy. It's not the forgiveness request. It's not an apology.
No, and it's a demonstration of a lack of empathy.
Yeah. It's supposedly, yeah, it's lack of empathy. It's lack of sympathy. And it's abdication of responsibility and it's almost blaming. So
So
uh,
don't do it.
so, it's really icky way to apologize. It's really not an apology. It's a deflection of energy, sometimes to avoid, going, like you said, into a place like, oh, I know you're disappointed and I'm a bad person and I don't want to feel like a bad person, or I just need to do what I want to need to do and I don't really care about your feelings, is the way it comes across. So careful when you use it. In fact, if you can avoid using it, avoid it. I'm
And
really,
a hijackal will take it to the next level and they'll say, well, that was an unrealistic expectation on your part that we'd meet on that day anyway. Right.
well, yeah.
So, understand that these things happen.
Yeah, for people who can't take responsibility for anything that happens in a relationship that's negative, that's disappointing, really big red flag. Really, really big red flag. But the minute they can, you step up in someone's world and in their awareness, and also you educate people when you actually
Yeah.
take responsibility that this is how you do it.
Yeah. So hopefully we provided a few cues and clues today and maybe some new thoughts.
Love,
Maybe you've been putting up with somebody saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, and then accepting that as the whole enchilada. No, it isn't. As Laura said, it's an abdication.
so go out and be good, be respectful, be empathetic. You can use your sorry word whenever you need to, but be conscious of when you're using it. Um, and I love the idea of, you know, having that dialogue of it's uncomfortable and it may not feel good, but if you want to feel better, make the relationship whole again versus put little kinks in your chinks and kinks in your relationship, ask how you can make it up to them.
Or even better, suggest ways.
Yeah, or I want to, and here's what I'm thinking. I want to make it up to you. Here's what I'm thinking. I care, and not let people know you care. And
Hmm.
really, that's what an apology is. I care about you, and I regret, and I have some regrets about what's going on here, and I want to make this right. Here's some ideas, or I'm at a loss as how to make it right, but I'm here to have a conversation about it.
Yes, and then hang in for the conversation.
Hang it in. If you're working on a solution, it's much easier than to just be at odds and say, well, you did this and you did that, and I don't feel this. And if the person goes off, it's like, hey, I want to work this out. Um, if you need some time before we talk again, I that I get. I get it's upsetting, and I get I have a part to play in that. So take the time you need, and I'm here when we can work it out.
Yeah.
So go work things out.
Yeah, happily, even if fearfully.
Yeah, and we'll be back with another inspiring, educational, and informational topic for your emotional well-being next time,
And
couple
if you
weeks.
want to find some more help right now, go to transformingrelationship.com and you'll find all kinds of things, including my podcast. And where would you like people to go to find you, Laura?
Well,
Transformtoday.com?
transformtoday.com and the Feminine Power cards if you need that daily inspiration through the deck of wisdom cards we have. That would be great.
Okay, enjoy.
Bye.